Hey everyone, welcome back to the Christmas Carol Countdown on iHeart Movies. My name is Jonathan North, and in this episode, my friend Rachel Wagner is joining me to talk about 3 different television movie versions of A Christmas Carol. These 3 movies are all from Lifetime and Hallmark. They're all in that vein of rom-com-esque TV films, but each one is pretty different. First up is Ebbie, a Lifetime film from 1995. This one is a straight-up, gender-swapped version of A Christmas Carol with Susan Lucci in the title role as Elizabeth Scrooge. Her dead partner is Jake Marley, her assistant is Roberta Cratchit. You get the idea. The next 2 are more inspired by A Christmas Carol than they are trying to actively remake it. They both even mention the story by name and either quote it or heavily reference parts of it. The first one of these is called Every Day is Christmas. This one stars Toni Braxton as the Scrooge character, and actually just aired last year on Lifetime. The last one is called It's Christmas Carol, but it's better than its punny name might suggest. This one is from the Hallmark Channel in 2012, and as you may guess, the Scrooge character here is named Carol. She's played by Emmanuelle Vaugier. I really don't know how to pronounce her name. However, even though she's the character in the title, the real star of this film is Princess Leia herself, Carrie Fisher, who takes on not just the Marley role, but all the other ghosts as well. I decided to do these 3 as one episode because I asked Rachel for some Hallmark or Hallmark-like Christmas Carol ideas. I know the Hallmark Channel has done movies based on or inspired by the story before, and as Rachel is the host and founder of the Hallmarkies podcast, I knew she'd be the one to get suggestions from, and these are the 3 she gave me. And like I said, these aren't all from the Hallmark Channel, but they all have that Hallmark flavor, and if you've watched any Hallmark movies lately, you probably know what I mean. I think I'm going to do these in order of how I watch them.
Okay.
So let's start with Ebbie first.
Okay.
So all of these are ones that you picked out. So what was it about Ebbie that you thought would be a good one for me to watch?
So we had already done a lot of the television movie versions that that are my favorites we talked about, and so I thought this one makes some interesting choices in my opinion, and I thought it had a nice heart to it. And I hadn't seen it until last year when we did a ranking over at Hallmark's podcast of all different female Scrooge versions. So I watched it there and I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. And so I thought that it would be a fun one to talk about.
Yeah, this one is basically, of the 3, this one is the most Christmas Carol. This is basically a straight up gender swapped Christmas Carol. The others are more like they take inspiration from A Christmas Carol. This is they're trying to do A Christmas Carol, but in modern day with a female Scrooge.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this was one of the earlier female Christmas Carol stories. I like some of the choices that they make some parts of it are dated, but particularly the things involving her sister. I thought that was well done. It gives a kind of an interesting motivation why she becomes the person that she's become. And I thought that was pretty well done. I don't know. What did you think of it?
This one is probably, of the 3, I don't know, it might be my second favorite. It's not my least favorite, definitely, but I can't decide which of them is my favorite. I think this is up there, but I think it does suffer a little bit from being dated, but that's also not necessarily a bad thing. Because, it sort of reminded me of a cross between a soap opera and Touched by an Angel.
Yeah, I can see that.
Just the feel of it was very Touched by an Angel without angels. It was the ghosts instead of angels.
Well, and then you have just little things like she sees herself as a kid just loving the Dobson windows and the displays, and which she had just canceled earlier in the story. So there's a lot of kind of callbacks. And I liked little moments like when he says, "You'll have to take these meetings, 3 appointments." And he's like, "Can I take them all at once and set up a conference call?" That was a funny line, I thought. And the different past, present, and future are all people that she interacts with in the course of the day earlier. So like past are these ladies from the department store, the perfume girls, and they're pretty perky and kind of fun. And it definitely gets very soap opera with the boyfriend. But I think that's often pretty much. I feel like every female version of Christmas Carol, really in general, I think the oh my gosh, Belle. I think the Belle storyline is a little bit hard to kind of. It's pretty cheesy. It's pretty
Mhm.
melodramatic. It's all kind of broken up by the fact that her sister has this miscarriage, and
Well,
it's
it wasn't a miscarriage. She died in childbirth, didn't
yeah,
she?
she gets toxemia,
Because
and
the
yeah,
baby survives.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I have written down wrong, but she thinks it's her fault for going to this party,
Mhm.
and so she blames herself for the death of Fran. And that's kind of different. Usually it's just kind of a side note that, oh, the sister died in childbirth. But here they kind of try to make it sort of part of her downward spiral.
Mhm. It
And
reminded me sort of the 1951 version in that way.
mhm.
'Cause wasn't that the one that we watched where they added a lot to that backstory with
Yeah,
him and his sister?
they do add a lot of the backstory, and also it is kind of similar in the sense that you have Jake, the Marley character, and you kind of see the backstory of them buying Dobsons, and you know them making like the shrewd business deals. You kind of see that back story
Mhm.
like you did in 1951, and then you see this guy Paul and saying, "You always pick the job over me," and
Was the name Dobson supposed to be a reference to something? Because it sounded familiar, but I didn't know if it was supposed to mean something or if that's what they decided to call the store.
I think it was just what they decided to call the store, because in this case, instead of Fezziwig, it's Dobson, and she basically kind of screws over the Fezziwig character Dobson, and ends up buying the store out from under him, being kind of dishonest about it. And this guy Jake, when he dies, she's very like callous, like she's got it all. They got it all now. They got this other guy out of the way. There were too many people involved. So all of that is, I don't know. It is a little melodramatic, but I still liked it. I thought it was interesting choices,
Mhm.
and
I
um,
I noticed a lot of things. Like I said, this is like pretty much the one that's the most straight up remake or
yeah,
reimagining of it. But it seemed like they were trying to use a lot of the lines, but kind of updating them to a modern vernacular.
yeah, that's true.
Sometimes it worked, and sometimes it was
A little cheesy.
cheesy.
Yeah,
One of the better ones I thought was when she says, "There's too many people in the world anyway."
right, right. And yeah, and then the president says, "Well, didn't you say there were too many people? Isn't that what you said?" And she's like, "Oh, I didn't mean him."
Mhm.
And then the it says, "Which ones did you mean?"
Yeah.
Which is pretty good. I like that.
So, the ghosts, were they supposed to literally be the people that worked at the store, or were the ghosts taking the form of the people in the store?
I
Or was
think,
that even explained? I don't know.
um, that's an interesting question. I guess they're just taking the form because they're not dead.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think they're just taking the form.
Okay. I thought it was kinda funny though, that Christmas present, she was a
Right.
pun because she was the present wrapper at the store.
Yeah. It's it's a little much, but I enjoyed it too.
Uh-huh.
And, I thought that as Lorena Gale, and I thought she did a pretty good job. It
Mhm.
was fun.
I found it interesting that they actually included ignorance and want in this version,
Yeah,
and instead of having them, like, hide under Christmas presents robes, they were under wrapping paper.
right. Yeah, that was good. I liked that too. And I also like the perfume with the perfume girls, it's the perfume that takes them back in time. So they spray. and find out her dad was kind of a beast, that he never wanted kids or cats. He's gonna,
I think there's a lot of versions of this story where they give backstory that the dad is awful.
right.
But this
Yeah.
one seemed like he was probably super abusive.
Right. Yeah, you certainly see that in Diva's Christmas Carol, with her dad and being in foster care and all of that stuff. And so, yeah, I'd agree. A lot of them have that element. And you kind of see that Christmas was something that was a light, something that was positive to her. But losing the sister was the final straw for her, and as far as her mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the only one that really, maybe the 51 one also has him cheating Fezziwig, but you don't often see that. I mean, it's not in the book, but it's just sort of, you kind of assume that, of course, he would have done that to get where he was going. But here it's pretty tangible, because you see the Fezziwigs, you see the party, the Dobsons' Christmas party, which is where she was at when the sister dies. And so it makes sense to me what she ends up doing, I think. And then you see in the future, you see that Tiny Tim character, that he dies. And I did like Tiny Tim's song. He sings Angels We Have Heard on High. And that was nice. I liked that. He's the kid from Home Improvement, I believe.
Oh, yeah, I think I read that. He did look kind of familiar, but that wasn't a show that I watched all the time as a kid. So I wasn't familiar enough to recognize him until I read that.
Yeah. And she gets hit by a car, and she doesn't have any visitors. And she says, I know I can make things better by being better. And I thought she did a pretty good crazy Scrooge. I thought she was, Susan Lee, she's really good for this kind of melodramatic type material to play something soap opera-y. I think she does a good job.
Yeah.
And I liked the lady who played her sister. It's kind of interesting because they have Molly Parker playing Franny, the sister, and the daughter, which is kind of so I think they had some budget.
That's right.
The budget issues with that one.
It does kind of make sense, because she would look like parents, sort of. So just do her hair a little bit different, maybe. I don't know.
Did anything else stand out for you on this one?
A lot of the things that stood out to me were just like weird little things that were funny. Like at the beginning, the guy saying he finds her scary but alluring.
Yeah.
And then one thing that I did have a question on, maybe, I don't know if you would know this or not, but she says that Christmas is the last day before the biggest and busiest retail day of the year. So the day after Christmas is the biggest and busiest retail day of the year. So was this made before Black Friday was a thing? Because Black Friday is the biggest and busiest retail day of the year.
Yeah. So this is made in 1995, and I'm pretty sure Black Friday was a thing then. So I'm not sure what she meant by that. I mean, I think that the 26th is you get the most returns of any day of the year. That's what I remember hearing. But I don't know. That is interesting. Maybe that's what she meant.
I don't know. It just stood out to me. I was like, that the day after Christmas doesn't seem like it would be the biggest, busiest retail day of the year. It's like, what are you buying things for? Unless they're sales to get rid of things.
Yeah, that is interesting. I don't know.
Another thing that this is probably not meant to be funny, but I found it hilarious, was when she was sitting alone in her apartment, she made a microwave frozen dinner. And the way she was eating it, she was just taking the teeniest, tiniest little bites. And it just cracked me up. I don't know why.
Probably because, when you eat anything in a movie, you have to eat it like 5 million times.
That's probably true.
Yeah. But overall, I think it covers most of the basis of the story. And I think it has a nice heart to it. I think this story really works when you can see sort of when it's more than just about greed, when it's about, there's other reasons why the Scrooge character has turned away and isolated themselves from the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that helps. Plus, I think it has funny moments, like you were saying about Christmas Present. So I like it. I think it's a pretty decent one.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I'm gonna say it's probably my second favorite because I think I liked It's Christmas Carol a bit better than this one.
Mm-hmm. Well, should we talk about that one then?
No, we should talk about Every Day is Christmas next. That one
Okay.
was my least favorite.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you why I liked it.
Okay.
So the thing that worked for me in this movie, I admit that Toni Braxton is not the greatest actress in the world, and I also admit that the romance didn't really work that well. But I thought so. The idea of having her parents who died in this horrible car accident, and it had really traumatized her, and she hadn't really been able to kind of move on beyond that. And every time she saw her mother, I thought that it was just really devastating, and it really worked for me. And I mean, I can imagine if I saw, my grandma's just passed this year. If I
Mm-hmm.
saw either, and it wasn't even like a traumatic, wasn't even trauma thing, but I don't know. I just thought that really worked. Every time it was just like just her expression, just she was caving in inside every time she saw them. And I thought also because I think that even if I had literally just seen them, like 10 minutes before, when I saw them again, it would still just completely devastate me because you miss them so much. And that sense of missing her parents, I thought was really um, palatable, and they did a really good job with that. And I thought that that was an interesting approach to take to the movie of making it really about her grief and how that had sort of stalled her in her life, and how going through this experience kind of allowed her to sort of heal and be ready to kind of live a full life again. And I like Gloria Rubin quite a bit as her mom. I thought she did a good job, and that was what really worked for me about it, was this element of her seeing her mom, and just that how much she missed her mom. And I think about my grandpa who passed away in 2001, and I still to this day struggle to talk about him without crying because I missed him so much. And that's not even, that wasn't a traumatic death like this case. And it's been so long, but I don't know, I just miss him so much. And that's what I liked about the movie. I really thought it got that heart right. And so it was interesting, an interesting take on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't think that the family stuff, that wasn't what I didn't like about this one. The
Mm-hmm.
the family stuff was all good.
Yeah.
It was just a bunch of things that kept standing out to me.
Uh-huh.
Like the office workers. They all seemed to have very cheesy dialogue and their acting was not the greatest.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like it ranged from like decent to straight up cringy at times.
Yeah.
And the dialogue in the office, I don't really understand what they were talking about, but it seemed like even the writers didn't know what they were talking about. Like all the stuff they were talking about felt like really generic office talk. Like they were like one step away from going numbers, spreadsheets,
Yeah. I mean, I
stuff like that.
guess for me, that's a pretty small part of the movie. I feel like the movie is mostly this romance, which I didn't love,
Mhm.
and all this stuff with her and her mother. So I was willing to forgive that because
Yeah.
I felt like it's pretty minimal, but I don't disagree. It's not the best as far as that part.
The one other big thing that was through the entire movie that kind of, I don't want to say it bothered me, but it just stood out a little too
Hmm.
much was the music. It seemed
Yeah,
too playful and or silly when it needed to be more dramatic, like especially with like meeting her parents and things.
hmm,
It 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 didn't do the movie any favors when it made things seem like they were trying to be funny when they should have been going for dramatic.
I can see that. Yeah, that's true. That's a fair critique. Yeah, that's often a problem with these TV movies is that
Hmm.
a lot of times the music is too loud, and I didn't really feel like this was too loud, but that can be a problem with a lot of them. And then, yeah, it can be just too precocious, and can even in a movie that is precocious, it can be a little annoying to have the music telling you to feel precocious, like it could just be a little much. And so that's probably something, to be honest, that I've gotten a little accustomed to because I watch so many of these kind of movies.
Hmm.
But it is a frequent flaw in them is the music. I will agree with that.
Yeah, I kind of wondered because it seemed, I don't know, it just seemed very generic. Like the composer probably wasn't trying very hard. Like
Hmm.
they were trying to hit specific beats and that was about it. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It really took me out of it. But the family stuff was good. The romance stuff, I don't know if I bought them as a couple very much.
Yeah.
But like I didn't really understand their dynamic for most of the movie. Partly because I was trying to figure out who was who in terms of like which one is Cratchit, which one is the nephew. Like I was trying to figure out if the driver or Jeff was Cratchit. And then later I was thinking, well, it was the driver the nephew? But then the driver turns out was Belle.
Kind
So,
of, because then there's that other guy that she that from
oh,
her
that's true. There were
past.
two
Yeah, the
Bells.
minister guy. So yeah, there were kind of two bells. And it's the Cratchit one was the Jeff guy that she
Yeah.
at the end she ends up paying off his mortgage and everything. And I mean, at least I guess some of these guys must get overtime or whatever. But I liked the I mean, every time she saw her mother, I thought she did a good job.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of these kind of movies where I feel like the reaction is not a normal reaction. Like they had one this last weekend called Christmas on My Mind, where the lead character has this fall and gets amnesia, and nobody had like any. Everybody was just like very like, oh, okay. I mean, if that happened to anybody that you know, that would be a shocking. You can't remember anything, in the last 2 years. That would be shocking. Like you'd have a shocked
Uh-huh.
response, right? And
Yeah.
nobody did, and it was frustrating. And whereas every time she saw her mom, I felt it. So I guess my appreciation for this movie is pretty simple, and I liked that she obviously just misses her mother so much, and that would be so horrible in your your 20s to have both of your parents die in a car accident out of the
Hmm.
blue. Like that would be so traumatizing. And then if you actually did get to see them again, can you imagine how you'd feel? Like that would be just so overwhelming. And I appreciated that it seemed like it never got, despite her seeing them repeatedly, I felt like every single time she saw them, she kind of broke down. And like it
Hmm.
never became sort of routine for her. And that was what worked for me about this movie. I thought that was very well done. And I guess I connected to it kind of emotionally that I can't imagine how hard that would be to lose your parents like that, and then to be able to see them.
Hmm.
Um, and they show the whole scene where she's cooking Christmas dinner and everything's all happy, and then she gets that call, and it was kind of lame that the romance guy was there at the hospital for some reason. Like I'm like whatever, but nevertheless, when she gets the word from the priest or whatever that they've died and she's in that church, like that was pretty devastating to
Hmm.
me. And then she has to watch it again, and she's kind of saying like, why did I have to go through that again? And, like get re-traumatized. Um, and I said, and she says, "You have been running so long, you forgot to face your pain, and the only thing you love now is money." And so I thought that was an interesting take on the story because usually it's about sort of the fear of poverty that makes Scrooge the person that he becomes. But in this case, it's the fear of grief and the fear of pain that turns her into something that she can kind of control, which is work. It's the fear of dealing with that grief that's actually her problem, not money. And I like that. I thought it was a cool take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all the stuff with her family, that was all good.
Mm-hmm.
It was just one of those things where there was a bunch of other things happening that kind of turned me
Yeah.
off of it. But I can see why you would like it for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt like most of that other stuff was pretty minimal. Yeah, and then she sees her dad for future, and then that's her reaction to that is pretty emotional. She also sees, I thought the whole thing with her boyfriend was weird, because she has this boyfriend that she dumps at the beginning of the movie, and they're going to go to Bali, and she sees this whole scene of him picking out a wedding ring, and then they have a whole scene at the end where she tells him, oh, I'm sorry, but we're really not meant to be, or something. And I was kind of like, why did we need this whole plot line?
Yeah.
It was completely unnecessary. I don't understand why we needed her to have 3 different boyfriends, love interests in the movie, because she then goes and tells the minister friend, ex-boyfriend, that she's sorry. And it was kind of like her 12 steps or something. She had to say sorry to everybody. And then finally she kind of realizes that this guy is the driver is the guy for her. And all that stuff did nothing for me. I was just, I could have done away with it all and have it just be about her and her mom. That was what worked for me. The rest of it was not great.
The scene with her meeting her old fiance, who's now a pastor, that was fine. But the guy that she just broken up with, that one was really unnecessary. And the thing at the beginning was unnecessary. And he was one of the worst actors in the movie, I thought.
Yeah, he wasn't
not quite as bad as some of the ancillary Office people, but like of all the people who have like major dialogue, he was probably the worst.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was pretty bad. So I guess with this, like, there can just be one part that I thought was strong enough that it was worth discussing, and I thought it was a different take that I had seen before. So I think if you're gonna watch this movie, watch it for Gloria Rubin as her mom, and for that whole plot. Yeah. So I guess Christmas Carol is your favorite of this group. It's probably my favorite as well.
Yeah. I think in terms of like being a good adaptation of the source material, Ebbie is my favorite.
Yeah.
As far as being a good overall movie, it's Christmas Carol is my favorite.
Yeah. I think that's very fair. Yeah, this is definitely it's Christmas Carol is definitely a very loose adaptation. And the fact that they have Carrie Fisher playing every single ghost is a little bit much. I mean, I love Carrie Fisher, but whatever. She's so great. But yeah, she plays Marley, past, present, and future in the story. But did you like the office workers in this much better?
They were much better. At the very beginning, I was like, okay, this one guy, he's going to annoy me. He seems like a very bad overactor, but mellowed out. He was better by the end.
Yeah.
The 3 that were like scheming behind her back, they were kind of the worst ones, but they didn't annoy me in the same way that
I thought they were so funny. I enjoyed them, like the whole revolution. I thought that was really funny. But Carson Kressley, all this stuff made me laugh.
Yeah, they at the beginning I was like, oh no, we're getting into another situation like the other one, but then it turned out it wasn't like that at all.
Yeah. And you know what's really funny is that in Hallmark movies, a lot of times, especially if they're set in the city for some reason, if they want to show that somebody is a bad person, they they will have them ignore a bell ringing Santa. And they do that at the very beginning. This Scrooge character, they totally have her just completely like she's not even
ignoring him. It's like she's purposely taunting him.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, what's wrong with you? Get out of my way!" So that was hilarious. I really liked that with Carol.
That's kind of funny. I wouldn't have thought of that as being a trope, but I
Oh
mean, you're
yeah,
the
yeah,
Hallmark
yeah.
expert, so if something's a trope, you'll know it.
Yeah. And of course, any good Hallmark heroine would, of course, give to a bell ringing Santa. That is natural. But yeah, you have this character, Carol, who's a piece of work. She runs this publishing house. It's interesting with this because they kind of have two Cratchit characters in this one because
Hmm.
there's her assistant named Kendra, and then there's this woman named Tanya. And Kendra, what I thought was interesting is Kendra is sort of, she's taken on Carol as a mentor. And it's kind of similar to, I don't know if you remember when we talked about the Barbie Christmas Carol, but in the Barbie Christmas Carol, she sees in the future that her understudy or whatever has basically become like her and sort of taken her, and you
Oh
kind of, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and you kind of see that in Kendra, that she ends up kind of becoming, because she doesn't end up going with the boyfriend to Europe or whatever, and
Hmm.
she sacrifices all the stuff for Carol, and then she ends up kind of becoming like Carol in the future, which
Yeah.
is sort of upsetting for Carol. So there's kind of that plot line, which I liked. And then also you have this Tanya who tries to picture this novel at the beginning, and she gets fired for
Hmm.
doing it. So there's sort of that plot line as well. You also have that she doesn't ever visit her mother because she is very resentful. And so there's her mom with Alzheimer's, and there's this
Oh, that
nurse.
was wrong with her mom. I wasn't sure if they said because I was trying to figure out what was going on with her mom, like why she needed a caretaker.
Like, I don't know if they actually say those words, but I feel like it was pretty clear that was
Okay.
the problem, was that it was some kind of Alzheimer's type of thing. So yeah, she's super jerk. And yeah, I like the Office Revolt. I think it's just sort of just over the top enough to be funny, and they're gonna call it Revolution Publishing. Like, Viva Revolution. And there's some, I bet this had a lot of improving from Carrie Fisher. She was a really talented writer, and there's a
Uh-huh.
lot of moments in here that I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of came from her. Like, I
Okay.
love when when they say when she says bigger doesn't always mean better, and Carol says, give me one example. And she's like, tumors, cockroaches, holes in the wall. That is good. I like that. I also like just the like touch of whimsy that they have a few times, like when she goes out of she keeps going out of closets, and they're not like she's going into closets and they're not real. That this is a fake world kind of a thing is sort of funny.
That probably was, I mean, it was kind of funny, but that was probably the thing that kind of, I don't know, annoyed me the most about this version was that she keeps purposely trying to leave Eve.
Yeah, yeah,
Like she thinks she has some sort of control over the situation. She's like they've gone to the past and she's like, "Well, I'm leaving." And then she just leaves.
yeah.
Like, where did you think you were going to go?
That's fair. It's kind of funny though. Uh, but but it's also pretty aware of Christmas Carol, which is always
Uh-huh.
funny. And
I think
uh,
both this version and Every Day is Christmas like talked about A Christmas Carol,
yeah,
like mentioning the story, but I think it came up more in this one.
yeah. And she even says at one point there's some line like, it's not Star Wars after all. There's some line about that, which was funny. And um and I don't know, just lines like I like it when Carrie says, you think everyone who works for you is happy? I have to capture this look of total cluelessness. That's good. And so she was fun. I just liked Carrie Fisher in this
Hmm.
role.
It was my favorite part about the movie.
For
Like,
sure. There's
I
no
don't
doubt.
think the movie would have been the same if somebody else had played this part.
No way. No way. Uh, And she says, people like me have been coming down here to help people like you for generations. She says, Chuck was just the first one to write about it. Charles Dickens.
Uh-huh. Well,
So,
in that, talking about like the story of A Christmas Carol, at one point you see Carol's mom and the nurse watching a version of the Christmas Carol. It's the 1935 version with Seymour Hicks,
yeah.
which is such a weird coincidence because that's the version that I'm doing with Sarah this year.
Oh, really?
We'll be recording it probably next week, but
If I
that's the version we're recording and talking about.
if I'm not mistaken, I think Seymour Hicks played Scrooge twice. I think he
I
was
think
in
so.
that, and then I think he was in a silent movie version as
Yes.
well.
Yeah, because I think we noticed that when we watched it, because we watched this like 3 weeks ago. We still haven't reviewed it,
Yeah.
but we noticed it was the same person.
I like when Carol says, I feel sorry for Scrooge. Scrooge was a smart businessman who was bullied into being a sentimental spendthrift. That's good. That was good. And then you see that Carol is influencing Kendra, like I said, to be more like her and to not go away with her boyfriend because she's trying to get a transfer to
Mhm.
Paris, I think it is, or someplace like that. I
Yeah,
forget. But
I'm guessing that her publishing company must have like a branch in London, and
sure,
that's what she
yeah.
wants to transfer to.
Yeah. And I liked the moment where she's talking about her mom and Carol says all she ever did was work. And then Eve says, but she didn't have a choice. You do. And I thought that that was pretty good because
Mhm.
our, hard on Scrooge for obviously for the way he treats people. But I think what happens with Scrooge is that he, as a young person, he's so fearful of the world and fearful of poverty that he works really, really hard to get the position that he has. And I do like it I think it's in the Mickey's Christmas Carol when he says, you work all your life to get money, and then people just want you to give it away. Like that, and it is kind of true. Like if there was any other position that you work hard for, people wouldn't really expect you to just give it away. But it's more because he's just allowed his heart to be cold to the world and cold to Christ and what Christmas really means. And so, that's the case here is that it's not just that the Scrooge character in this case that Carol works hard. That's not a problem. It's that she's shut herself off from the joy of the world and she
Mhm.
doesn't have to. Her mother kind of had to because of the situation. Anyway, I like that. I think that's good because I think if you just portray Scrooge as a monster, you miss out on some of the story that it has to teach you.
Mhm.
So then she sees in the future, there's she sees Kendra at her funeral, and
The
she
only
says,
person at her funeral.
"Yeah, in honor of you, she deemed today as a work day."
That was funny.
Yeah, that's a good line. Uh, and she says, I don't want to be alone. I want to change. I don't know how to do it. And then later on, you see that with Kendra, and Kendra says, I thought I wasn't supposed to plan my life around a man. And then she says, you're planning your life with your man. And so then she makes everything right with her mother, with this guy, Ben, which again, the romance is I don't care about that at all.
Yeah, that was
Um,
probably the most boring part of the movie.
yeah. And I think the ending of her making everything right is a little drawn out for me. It's a little long. Of course, she manages to read that book overnight, which is pretty impressive. She tells the other Cratchit lady that she's going to publish this book,
Mhm.
give her a raise and everything. So
Yeah, I didn't really understand what was so great about the book because it turned out that the book was by and about her boyfriend. But like, what did he do that was so great and life changing and inspiring? It really wasn't explained.
yeah, that's true. It was by her ex, and I don't know, it's just a really compelling read. Evidently, I don't know. Uh, so
And overall, it's probably not important to the plot, but it's just Made a big deal out of it.
I
So
mean,
it's like,
she read it and she was willing to take on Carol, and she liked it so much. So evidently, it's just a great book.
apparently.
This one doesn't have, I don't think, the emotion of Every Day is Christmas, which is what I appreciated about that one. It's more fun. It's more funny because Carrie Fisher's the best.
Yeah.
And I think Emmanuelle Weger is a pretty decent actress. I think she does okay. She's not Carrie Fisher, but she's okay. I think.
The only other thing I've ever seen her in is Smallville, because she played Lex Luthor's girlfriend in an arc in like the early seasons. I think it ended with them both trying to like kill each other in various ways. I don't remember. It's been a
Yeah.
long time since I watched those, but that's the only thing I've ever seen her in. I've never been sure on how to pronounce her name.
Yeah, she's in a couple different Hallmark movies. She's not like my favorite of Hallmark leading ladies, but I think she's okay. She does okay.
Yeah, she was fine.
Yeah,
She wasn't my
exactly.
favorite in this movie, but that's because nobody could beat Carrie Fisher.
Yeah, that's true. It's really true. I mean, I prefer versions. None of these three are like my favorite versions. We'd already done most of my favorites, or you had done them.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think they all try different things and are entertaining. So for me, I would say I like the fact that Every Day is Christmas is about grief and about this relationship with her mom and seeing her mom again. I just thought that was really good. I like that with Ebbie. I think it is funny, and it also has that emotion, in anything dealing with her sister. And I just think it's sort of clever, like Ghost of Christmas Presents, and
Mm-hmm.
them coming from the store, and makes it a fun watch. And then I also just this is Christmas Carol is just, it's funny, and it gets some of those beats down for Christmas Carol, and it's got Carrie Fisher. So all three I think are worth a watch, and I think are entertaining. None of them are perfect, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah.
especially if you're someone like me who's wanting to watch a bunch of different versions of things.
Yeah.
I would say check these out. If you're only going to watch one, I'd say it's Christmas Carol, but I think
Yeah.
Ebbie's worth it too. And Every Day is Christmas depends on who you are. If you're more like Rachel, you'll like it. If you're more like me, you probably won't. But
Yeah, fair enough. But I would agree that It's Christmas Carol is the best of these three. I would
yeah,
agree.
especially because I just love Carrie Fisher.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching them.
Yeah,
It's fun to see some different versions.
yeah. I mean, even if I don't fully enjoy the movie, I still have fun watching the different versions.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's probably all we've got for today. Do you want to let people know where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that out. Also, I'm at the Hallmarkies podcast.
Okay, and I'll have links to all that down below.
Great. Well,
Okay,
thanks for having
well,
me on.
yeah, thanks for joining me. This is fun.
Hey, well, a Merry Christmas one last time.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Thanks again to Rachel for joining me on this episode. I'll have links to all her projects down below. Like I said earlier, my cousin Sarah and I will be talking about the 1935 Seymour Hicks version of the story. We just need to actually get it recorded. This month has just been so busy, and trying to fit everything in around work, holidays, and even illnesses has made things extra challenging. But we are going to get this episode done if it's the last thing we do. Hopefully we can get it done before the year is out, but either way, we will get it recorded eventually. Anyway, I'll be back one more time with one more episode of the Christmas Carol Countdown next time on iHeart Movies. Thanks for listening.